By the millions, they were the faceless, the nameless, as they bent over their task. Long rows of crops, endless tracks of railroads, laboring invisibly below the poverty line, below the radar of most Americans. But there was one single face among them demanding to be seen, one voice insisting on being heard. He came to represent all of his struggling, undocumented brothers and sisters. He was Bert Corona.
It is very important that we examine the attitudes that the average American has held towards the Spanish-speaking people of our land. We have to view this thing as a total entity, and that involves American families viewing the Spanish-speaking as brothers that are welcome and that are needed and that are here to make a very important contribution to our country.
No cause was too insignificant, no challenge too overwhelming for Corona. He never swayed from his vision, his faith, his belief that undocumented workers can educate themselves, recognize their potential, and organize, organize, organize.
He is a source of engagement. He is a source of perseverance. He is a source of inspiration, of saying, no se dejen, sí se puede.
What he represents is anything is possible. That justice is possible, and fairness is possible, and equality is possible.
Although Corona's name has yet to be inscribed in history books, his struggle for social justice is equally important as the work of other great civil rights leaders, like Cesar Chavez. Chavez organized farm workers, but Corona did what no one else wanted to do: organize the undocumented. Corona may have been a controversial activist, but his tenacity and persistence in his quest for social change gained him respect among friends and adversaries. Over time, he helped establish key organizations such as the National Congress of Spanish-Speaking People, the Mexican-American Political Association, the National Hispanic Media Coalition, and Hermandad Mexicana Nacional, a nonprofit organization that continues his legacy, providing legal and educational services to immigrants.
If you were rescuing people from a burning building for 60 years, you'd think you'd eventually get exhausted, but he just never did.
But I was here on that day on August 29, 1970, when the police and sheriff's officers came down and beat up and assaulted a peaceful rally to protest the unequal dying of Mexican youth in the war in Vietnam. The police began to break in through there in formation with batons and guns. And so the kids were defending themselves with these little sticks that they had the signs on. The police just beat up on the children, on anybody that got in their way. And we had priests, we had pastors, we had women, teachers from many of the schools. Consequently, we had 5 people killed that day.
The face of Los Angeles politics would be different if not for Corona. He worked to elect more Chicanos to the LA City Council, among them Edward Roybal in the 40s, the first ever Mexican-American city councilman. But Corona's influence did not stop at city borders.
He spent his life so that the children of the movement, the next generation, would become statesmen. We, the next generation, thank you, Bert.
I've often said that no matter where I go, no matter what I do, it was Bert and the movement created by the Hermandad
and had it not been for Corona, immigrants may still be considered illegal in this country. He believed the term illegal alien was psychologically damaging to our youth. So he challenged it, and people listened. The Los Angeles Times eventually dropped the term in its reporting.
He did not care about his public image. He was very modest.
But it was in 1986 when Corona's true power was felt. From the halls of the White House to the streets of Los Angeles, he helped pass a sweeping amnesty law, legalizing nearly 3 million undocumented immigrants all across the United States.
Because of him, literally millions of people are now citizens that will be voting, that will be productive citizens in our community, rather than undocumented, rather than being afraid of being deported any day.
Corona's crusade began long before Dr. Martin Luther King's marches of Mississippi and Montgomery, and long before Cesar Chavez's fight to organize farm workers. Corona's battles began 70 years ago, when in the 1930s he helped organize the Longshoremen's Union and warehouse industry.
And he organized all kinds of people of different ethnic backgrounds. Russian Jews, Mexicanos, of course, other Latinos, African Americans, and he became a very skilled organizer. He learned from some of his elders in the union movement.
But it was his family that fueled his early commitment to la lucha, the fight. Born and raised in El Paso, Texas, Corona was the son of a colonel who fought in the 1910 Mexican Revolution with Pancho Villa. And the influential women in his life were strong feminists of their time. His mother, a school teacher. His grandmother, a nurse.
I think that really shaped Bert. I think he had that sense of commitment.
It was a basketball scholarship at USC that lured a young Corona to California. But it must have been fate, for he was injured and never played again. The rest became history.
This is a man who understood our pain and our suffering and gave us solace and compassion and nurture us so that in fact we would be strong enough to meet what was up ahead.
There was no greater champion for the rights of the nation's undocumented than Bert Corona. His dream of his immigrant brothers and sisters one day working in harmony, reuniting with their families across the border, will continue through the people whose lives he touched.
Before, it was him, a lone voice out in the wilderness trying to make people listen to reason. Now there's a lot of us.
Bert Corona would hand us the baton. He would encourage us to continue the struggle, to expand our vision, to open new vistas for the youth, the immigrant youth of America, and to never be quiet and never rest until our dreams are realized.
For a man Martin Luther King called Brother Corona, a man Robert Kennedy publicly thanks.
I want to thank Cesar Chavez and Bert Corona, who also worked with him, and all of those Mexican Americans who were such supporters of mine.
Bert Corona has left a lasting imprint, a country that is better for all of us.
So somewhere along the line, we will be like Europe, where people who live in Europe always seem to know 2 or 3 or 4 languages, and they're familiar with the cultures of each other's countries, and they seem to be able to get along well. I think that's what we've got to strive for.
Bert Corona was 82.